my diagnosis is not who I am, is what I like to say. Sure, I can have a visual processing disability, ADHD, dyslexia, but that's not, I don't go up to people and I'm like, hi, I'm dyslexia. That's not, I say, hi, I'm Venice Mitchell. I am Miss Mesa County Teen. And as they get to know me, then like, oh yeah, for sure. Like I do have dyslexia and ADHD, but that is not who I am. That is not my name. That is not my label. And you don't have to go around being like, oh, I have dyslexia and ADHD. Like it's such a horrible thing. If you go around spreading it like this is great. Like I can see total different than other people.
My guest today is Venice Mitchell, Miss Mesa County Teen 2025. Now competing for the title of Miss Colorado Teen, Venice advocates for students with learning differences such as dyslexia and ADHD, encouraging them to embrace these unique styles of thinking as superpowers. In this episode, she talks about how it felt to struggle in school, what happened that finally changed her entire self-concept, and what she wants other students, parents, and teachers to know.
I have been struggling through school ever since I was in first grade. And we didn't really know why. We just kind of figured, oh, I'm not doing as well. So they actually held me back in the first grade because they just thought, oh, she's just slower than the rest. So one more year is going to work. But then when that second year, they did testing, they put me in this class that had me read with like a little finger, and I actually really liked that class. It was so much fun. And I had also had a speech impediment, so I did a little bit of a speech class, but it wasn't the right class for me because we just didn't know what I needed. And so they just kind of let me out of the class, and then every teacher kind of just passed me along. And I went through a bunch of different schools, and they just thought, oh, I'm just going to move her along for the next teacher to have to worry about or whatnot. And that was kind of my entire schooling up till sophomore year of high school. And then when my sister got diagnosed and my older brother got diagnosed, they kind of figured maybe she's needs some help also. Maybe that's what's going on. And then come to find out, I was like one of the worst cases out of both of them. So um then I realized I don't want any other kid at that age to have to go through that learning experience that I did. I still don't know things to this day that no one taught me, and a lot of teachers put pressure, and a lot of students would make fun of you, and no little elementary school kid should have to go through that just because they physically cannot do something in their learning that other kids have to. So that is why I'm here today running my Miss Mesa County Teen campaign with my CSI called Superpower Thinking, so no other children has to go through what I did.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing about this. I was just going to ask you sort of what your reason is and just let the audience know why you're talking about this in your run for Colorado Miss Teen. Isn't that right?
Yes, it is.
You're talking about dyslexia and other learning related struggles, how they impact children and adolescents. And that's kind of your message that you're running on, right?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So now we can get into a little bit of this. So, do you want to share a little bit about when you were diagnosed? Was it during your sophomore year?
Yes, it was. It was actually this year, only a couple months ago, and we figured we should probably get my accommodations now so that I have it for the big important tests like SATs and finals and when it matters most, and so that like later on in high school I'm not struggling as much as I did.
Do you want to share? And of course, we talked a little bit beforehand, nothing that's too personal, only what you feel comfortable sharing. But since this is your platform for what you do with the pageants, do you want to talk about what what you were diagnosed with? And then we can kind of go back and talk about, how this impacted you before you got tested.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I got diagnosed with dyslexia, which I kind of already mentally knew. I was like, there's no way I'm seeing the paper like this. And then I also got diagnosed with a visual processing disability. And that's one thing that it was so little in my mind that I didn't even think that I would have that. And I realized before that I couldn't write without my head being on the desk and like tilted this way. And if not, then I'd always have the paper facing this way instead of this way. And or else I couldn't write and it just would be horrible. And then when I found out I had the visual processing disability, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much more sense why I'm doing all these things. And then also I got diagnosed with ADHD, which my brother has it too, but his is the hyperactive kind. And I have the kind where it's more mental. I don't know how to put that, but then there's another type where it's combined. It's more of the hyper and the focusing, but mine is solely just on the focusing, and it's very very severe case, which I actually was like that. It's a total makes 100% more sense. And before that, I always thought in my head like, why are these kids doing better and I'm not? I'm trying twice as hard and I'm still failing and these kids are succeeding. And I never thought that until I got my diagnosis and I thought, oh my goodness, this makes so much more sense. And I was less down on myself for thinking differently than the other kids because at my school, it's so funny. The students there, if you're popular, it's because you were the fastest kid that can read like the fastest in class. And it's you were popular if you got aced your math test and if you were in the highest literacy class, and I was in the lowest everything. And so I just kind of thought, well, it's because I'm stupid or I can't learn. And then I got a diagnosis and I was like, all the puzzle pieces came together and I was like, oh, like no wonder. I was like, I am trying twice as hard and it's okay, like, because I see differently. So it's just a whole different mindset change after my diagnosis.
So when you were younger, you sensed that something was off. Did you have, you mentioned that you weren't sure about or you were surprised by maybe the visual processing. Were there any indicators? Like, can you just describe, if there were, what it felt like or what you noticed about yourself that led you to believe, okay, something is just not, something's harder for me than maybe for my other students, for my classmates?
Yeah, for sure. I realized I had dyslexia, and when I couldn't process information like other people, because it would I would be reading and every other kid would read perfectly and I'm going through, and to this day still I cannot read without my finger, and I'm using that as a prompt, as like a microphone to say like it's okay. And that's when I realized I was in like third grade and all these kids have their chapter books out and I'm sitting here with the little like picture paper and I'm like uh and so I was like, I don't think something's right unless these kids are all prodigies. As a little kid, I wasn't thinking too much of it. I just figured in my mind, I thought dyslexia and ADHD and the speech impediment all made me stupid, and so that's just how I thought like, oh, it's okay because I'm just stupid. Like I would just breeze it off like, oh, I'm just stupid. It's okay. I didn't think I knew something was wrong, but I just categorized it as I'm not smart enough. And that's just my whole mental mindset for my entire schooling. And it was not very fun.
What was when you talk about the ADHD, the inattentive type, I think is what you're probably
Yes.
referring to. Um, did you notice that when you were younger, before you were diagnosed, and what did that feel like? What did you attribute that to? And then, how did that change when you got that diagnosis explained to you?
Yeah, for sure. I had a smaller diagnosis by my doctor when I was in fifth grade because before that, I would never read a single page in the book because I didn't want to. I didn't have that drive to. And it was even out of school, like at home, my room, when people say like their room is messy, mine didn't even look like a room. Like it wasn't even, you would, if you walked in, you would not even think it's like a kid sleeps in that room. Like it was really bad. And I had no motivation, no drive to do anything except for the things I was passionate about. And some people would say, like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I'd figure, oh, me neither. But I didn't realize the level of, like, just, oh, I kind of don't want to do it, but I'll do it, versus I didn't want to, so I physically couldn't, if that makes sense. The go button doesn't work. And we found that my parents kind of noticed when it was actually online school. They didn't really notice until I was sitting in front of them doing schooling that something was wrong, where the teacher would be like, okay, like read this. And I think my book did not even have a crease in it. I don't even think I opened the first page. I didn't, nope, nothing. And I would like do random things in my room that I wanted to instead of online schooling. And that's where I figured out how to take tests without having the knowledge of actually reading. And now I can get like 99 out of 100s without even reading a single page of the book because I trained myself to do that during online school. And my parents were like, hey, something's up. We should get you medication. And so I've got a small diagnosis from my doctor where I just had some medication and it didn't really work so well. So it didn't really get figured out until like 8th grade. And then that's when we were like, okay, we got to push this further. And it kind of went into my sophomore year.
So you've really taken a journey towards understanding yourself, and it's really cool to hear that you went from a place of feeling like, I think, as you said, that you just weren't as smart as anybody else and that there's something wrong with you, to a place of understanding, okay, here's how my brain works. Do you want to talk a little bit about, since this is sort of a platform for you and you share this with the wider community, what are some of the myths and misconceptions around dyslexia and ADHD based on, what you've learned in your own experience?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones for me was for dyslexia. The biggest thing I would say is just they can't read. It's they can't read the words, it takes them longer to pronounce it. And so I actually, freshman year, I was taking a history test, and the one of the special education teachers came in and was like, hey, can I help you with this test? And I thought, finally, yes, I'm going to pass this history test for the first time. And I went in there, and all she did was read aloud the question to me. And I didn't really understand why she did that. And I asked, and she was like, oh, because we figure you have dyslexia. And I like told her, I was like, I could read the problem to you. I could read this to you 500 times, but I'm not understanding it. There's a whole piece with like seeing the words and reading it, and it actually sticking with you and you understanding it and it being in a full, complete sentence. And people just think, oh, you can't read. And so was like, well, it's not very helpful to me. And then I just never went back to that class. And then also with ADHD, a lot of people think it's just they can't pay attention and they're super hyperactive. And sure, that's one element of it, but that's not the whole piece. Like mine is intentative. So I went undetected for so long because mine wasn't hyper. I could actually sit still and not say anything for hours on straight because I was zoning out the entire time because it's a different type of ADHD. So when people are like, oh, she doesn't have ADHD, well, I do, but it's not the kind that's stereotypical.
And girls with inattentive type, especially when they're, they're not hyperactive, if they're not causing problems in the class, it's very common for them to go unidentified for just the reasons that you said. If I'm a teacher and I'm looking out at the classroom and you're looking back at me, I'm thinking, oh, Venice is paying attention. Good job, right? But maybe you're
Yeah.
thinking about something totally different.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I used to do that every single day. People are like, oh, like, how do you not sleep during class? Uh, well, I, eyes are open. If you sleep with your eyes open, they can't tell.
So those are two great myths then. So just because you have dyslexia doesn't mean you can't read or that you can't learn to read. And two, just because you have ADHD doesn't mean you're bouncing off the walls, hyperactive, and that it's
Yeah.
obvious to other people. So those are two really key points. What are some of the strengths that you feel like people ought to be aware of around either dyslexia or ADHD?
Yeah, I see. For sure, I think problem solving is one of them. When I used to just see the outer picture of the problem and I used to see it like in my mind, it's so many pictures. I can see just the whole group, and then I can see, oh, well, if you have a red mixing with the blue, obviously there's going to be a problem. So let's mix the red with the red. And that's how I saw it. But in reality, it was like a huge problem that these two people are having. And I was able to just like solve it. And that's because I understood it. And so actually, when I was in like kindergarten or so, we used to have this corner where if you had a problem with a person, you go in that corner and you work it out. And there was like a list on the board of how to's, how to work it out. And every time I saw two people going in the corner, I would actually go in the corner and solve their problem for them. I would be like, hey, you better give that pen back and ask for it next time. And then also for ADHD, mentioned how if we're passionate about something, it can be done so quickly. And that's how I'm like exceeded in volleyball and in like pageantry because I was so passionate about it that it just happened. And I was passionate about my freshman thesis too. Just the topic, it was about heroes, and I had so many heroes in my mind that I finished my 10-page thesis in one single sitting.
So one of the strengths of dyslexia is outside the box thinking, and you've really you showed that from an early age. And then with ADHD, it's your ability to focus, hyper focus on what you're most interested and passionate about, and to get things done quickly and well. So those are two really great assets to have. What do you think, if you had to go back and talk to some of your teachers from the past, what would you want them to know? And you don't have to go into tons of examples, but if there's just a couple things that you wish that past teachers had known about maybe where your struggles and where your gifts lie, what would those be?
I would say for sure that not everyone learns the same way. And if someone's behind on one thing, that doesn't mean that they're behind on everything. I used to not be able to subtract until I was in fifth grade. And my teachers really pressed that on me. But that doesn't mean I didn't know how to do like all these fractions and everything. So just because I don't learn in the traditional mold that everyone else learns in doesn't mean that I can't learn, period. I just didn't learn in the traditional setting that was built by the curriculum. I learned in a bunch of different ways, and that doesn't mean I can't learn at all.
Yeah. Venice, did you enjoy school?
No, no, period. Like, I really, like, I used to enjoy the first day of school because that was when we didn't do anything. And so I'd get to school, I'd be like, I'm making all my new friends today. And then I'd go home like crying because I hated it so much. And like every time there's a bad teacher or something, I would usually wait until I'm by myself because I, again, wanted to go undetected. But I would like come home and I just start crying. Like, there's no way that I have to do this for another 8 years. And there's no way I have to do this for college. It's going to be so hard. And I'd get so much anxiety just thinking like this next year is going to be another step harder than it was this year, which is already like 3 steps harder than it was last year. So like every last day of school, I would just like bawl my eyes out because I did not want to go to the next year. It was not fun.
Well, you're a really great example of the struggles because, as you just said, you enjoy socializing, you're good at problem solving, you seem to enjoy learning, you go after what you're passionate about, and clearly, what you're doing with as Miss Mesa County Teen is it shows that drive. And so, to dislike school so passionately, I think that contrast really drives home the plight of people with dyslexia, right?
Yeah.
Just that difference between the school experience and the life experience. Is there a teacher that you feel like really had a positive impact or did something in a certain way that really resonated with you?
Yes. It was my science teacher freshman year, and I had never liked science. Science was horrible. I failed it every year. And I get to that science class, and I'm just so upfront with her. And I was like, hey, I do not learn very well, by the way. I was like, I don't like school. And I also got really bad test anxiety because I can know the knowledge. The second I get to the paper, whoop, out the window. So I was just telling her, and because I don't know how I felt connected to her in that moment, but I just was like, I need to tell her. And I did. And she was like, I have test anxiety too. I have ADHD. And so we talked about it, and she printed out fill in the blank notes for me so that I didn't have to pay attention to her speaking the notes, writing it down, getting the spelling right all at once. I could just focus on the material. And then on the test questions, she'd have every single test question the same wording as the study guide because it's not a trick. It's just, do you know the information that we're trying to give you? It's not, how can I reword this to where you have to like figure it out on how it's what the actual question is. And so with that kind of study guide and with that kind of wording on the test, I was able to get the highest biology test score on my final. Without the study guide, I was able to get, I think it was like a 98.9 out of 100 the first try on my like all year final. And I really connect to that teacher now because she helped me through that.
Was that a self-led decision to go advocate for yourself, or did somebody encourage you to do that? And was that easy or hard for you?
It was a self-led decision and it was really hard. I have never advocated for myself before that. I still don't. I don't even like taking my own orders still. And so I just felt almost angry in that moment that, and I never get angry. That's like something that doesn't ever happen. And in that like moment of getting first year of high school, seeing what's all these classes are like, I just was like, I cannot do it anymore. I was like, I hate struggling. I hate feeling this way. And I figured, okay, something has to happen. And I was just in her class when it when that little strike of some change has to happen like happened. And so I just was like, I need to tell her, even though it was so hard for me to speak about my problems, it was really relieving to know that someone else was in the same boat as me and was like, we can work through this, and didn't just pass me along with all the rest of the teachers.
A lot of parents listen to this show, some of whom probably have dyslexic kids, or maybe they themselves are dyslexic, or they're struggling with ADHD or whatever. What would you say to those parents? What should parents know about what their kids are going through, or even about themselves for that matter?
Their kid doesn't learn the same way as you will have learned, is what I want all parents to know. Like, just because they learned something this way doesn't mean that it has to be set like that. That's not one specific way. This is how it has to happen. Things can happen in different ways and in different time periods. Like, to all the parents, I would say be a little more flexible with their learning style, and it's an adapt for both. It goes both ways. It's not just I have to completely learn a new language for my kid, and but it's at the same time their kid doesn't have to struggle trying to communicate just to their parents.
What is the understanding of dyslexia and ADHD among high schoolers these days, your classmates? How much do they know about this? How much do they talk about it? What's that conversation look like?
With my friend group, they knew something was up with me also. It was a lot more in my friends that they noticed something was wrong because I hung out with them more, because that was, I loved hanging out with them more. So I would go hang out with them more, and they noticed. They were like, hey, so something is up. And they knew it, but they didn't speak it out loud because they didn't want like my feelings to be hurt or anything. And when I did get diagnosed, I went and I was like, guys, you would not believe this. This is so funny. I thought it was hilarious because I was like, I knew something was up, but I did not realize it was this bad. That's so funny. And they were like, we know. And I was like, what? And they're like, we've known all along that something was up. And just the power that I knew that they, even though they knew, they stuck with me and they were still my friends and they still like very hiddenly helped me through it was very impactful. And I realized like those are good friends right
A lot of parents who are looking to have their children evaluated are worried about a label, like a diagnosis for their child. They feel like it might impact their self-esteem, et cetera. What would you say, just based on your experience, what would you say about that?
I would say it does impact your self-esteem, but not in the way parents are thinking. I was actually so much more hard on myself. I thought, like, every single day I'd come home, I'd put my homework on the table, and I would go, "Nope, I can't do it, I'm stupid," and I'd put it away, and nothing would get done. And then the second I realized I got that diagnosis, I was like, "Oh, like, I'm not just stupid, like, there's a reason behind it," and actually my self-esteem grew through the roof. And so it's not what parents are thinking like, "Oh, I have a label now. Oh, dyslexia is stupid." If you're telling them that dyslexia and ADHD is a problem, then they're going to think that. But if you give them it's a superpower. That's why my superpower thinking is my CSI initiative, because it is a superpower. And if you tell children that they're not good enough, then they're going to think they're not good enough. My diagnosis is not who I am, is what I like to say. Sure, I can have a visual processing disability, ADHD, dyslexia, but that's not, I don't go up to people and I'm like, "Hi, I'm dyslexia." Like, that's not, I say, "Hi, I'm Venice Mitchell. I am Miss Mesa County Teen." And as they get to know me, then like, "Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I do have dyslexia and ADHD, but that is not who I am. That is not my name. That is not my label." And you don't have to go around being like, "Oh, I have dyslexia and ADHD." Like, it's such a horrible thing. If you go around spreading it like, "This is great. Like, I can see total different than other people," then they're not going to think of it as a bad thing either. And it's not a set label.
You explained that really well. Tell us about your interest in Miss Teen and what that journey looks like and what you're doing around that and how that all works.
I started pageants actually when I was around 9, and I was doing a different pageant program called the Colorado Cinderella Pageant Program. And we decided to join that one when I was like, "Mom, I want to be on AGT. I want to be on that America's Got Talent stage," because I was very musically inclined, and that's one of the things with dyslexia for me. I do everything through music. That's how I spell some letters to this day, is because I put it in a song. And she was like, "Well, let's start small. Let's do some local pageants." And we joined that system because it's so much more less pressure on like how you look good on stage, and it's more the kindness of your heart. And I was really drawn to that. It's more about the connections you make with people. And I was a very social person. So I would say, "Oh, I love this." And then I was doing interview, some practice with my coach, and she was like, "Venice, your answers are not what anyone else are saying. You should do the Miss America Teen program. Like, you have answers that I've never heard." And that's connected with that dyslexia and ADHD. Like, I just thought of answers that it's outside of the box. And so I started joining that. And when I heard that there's a community service initiative, I was like, "I know exactly what I'm doing." I guess I had this passion of teaching little kids about it's okay to feel this way for a while, but I never thought like that's exactly what I needed. I just needed a microphone to filter that into, and the Miss Mesa County Teen in this pageant system is exactly what I needed to spread my message.
You are a very clear and persuasive presenter. So that you think relates as much to the fact that you think outside the box because of dyslexia than it does because of any training that you've had for pageantry.
Yeah, for sure. You can train someone with dyslexia and ADHD however much you want, but if they're not passionate about it, if they don't love it, if they don't think, if they're not like, "Oh wow, this is so cool," then none of it's gonna stick at all.
All right, tell us where you're going, what's your next thing for your next step for Miss Teen, and what we can look forward to.
My next step for sure is presenting this to the judges and letting them know I have a message and I'm going to spread it whether I'm elected as Miss Colorado Teen or not. Like, this isn't something that I'm just doing for pageantry. This isn't something just because to get it on paperwork and turn it into 3 panel judges. This is something that I'm going to continue whether or not I'm elected or not. but that election is going to get me to be able to spread the message further. If I get Miss Colorado, then I'm going to try so hard to get Miss America Teen so that I can spread it to the entire nation.
That's so cool. You're doing awesome work. It's an important message. You're getting it out. Big kudos to you for
Thank you.
everything that you've done and kind of overcome and worked on and helped illustrate. And I also want to let listeners know where they can find you too.
Oh, you can find me on, I have it, my Instagram is Miss Mesa County Teen, and if you have any further questions, I can also, am free to help on that. It's Miss Mesa County Teen, Colorado, I think, and, or just Venice Mitchell. I'm on there, Venice Mitchell, and very simple to find. It has links to all my pages about dyslexia and everything. If you have any further questions, I'm here to help.
Perfect. And I'll put all that down in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure.
And good luck with Miss Colorado Teen.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
That's it from us today. As always, you can find more information as well as resources on our website, individualmatters.org. We hope you'll join us at the next podcast, where we'll continue to explore topics around successful living, learning and education, and child development, and share ways to help you live a more positive and fulfilling life.
The preceding information is not intended to provide or serve as medical, clinical, or educational advice. Individual Matters is not responsible for the accuracy of guest statements. All information should be validated independently. Please consult with your doctor, mental health provider, attorney, or other appropriate professionals before making any personal decisions for yourself or those in your care.